This podcast is sponsored by Camera Museum of London and Tang Cigars at 44 Museum Street, London. Welcome to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Today we are interviewing Michael Sartain. This is part two of this podcast. Michael, so what do women want?
It's interesting, right? So the thing is, if I presume to answer that question, there's two different issues. I'll answer the question, but if I presume to answer that question, do you see that there's a certain group of people who are offended by it? And number two, just because I'm a man. And number two, and by the way, if a woman tried to say what women want, there's probably some people who would also be offended, right? You don't speak for all women. But number two, there's a really interesting. So if you go back 600 years ago, there were people, you know how we would dissect a frog back in biology class? There was a look at the human body. It was Orion Terabin who talked about this, and it's such a brilliant metaphor. You weren't supposed to look at the human body that close. That people were not supposed to dissect the body after it was dead. It was almost like sacrilegious. You're not supposed to investigate or inspect that much. When it comes to relationships between men and women, it's almost like a moral affront when you look that close. Does that make sense, Richard? The problem is not the answer. The problem is that if you look too closely to ask the question, there's some people who don't like that. Does it make sense? It's better if it's a mystery for some people. What do women want? Women want, higher status and better sexual selection of men that they can procure that will help them in the future with their progeny. And men want the same thing. Ultimately, from an ultimate standpoint, proximately, what do women want? Every woman is different. Every woman is different. And you're talking about women as a gender throughout history. They've wanted the best partner that they could find to help them raise a child. And the same thing with men wanting the best woman they can find to help them raise a child. And if that offends people, the idea of reproduction being central to the Homo sapien existence, then ask yourself, how in the world at one point were there 60,000 humans on the planet and now there's 8 billion? And the reason why is because reproduction was integral to the Homo sapien experience. Regardless of how much we want to call ourselves independent and, want to be as progressive as possible, independent men, independent women, no matter how progressive we want to be, we're still at our heart, hairless murder apes that are descendants from primates. And those primates that we're descended from were looking for better sexual selection, and so are we. And there's no examples where this isn't the case. Even women in certain Scandinavian countries, when they start making more money than men, they want men who make even more money than them. Well, if you were listening to a social scientist, that shouldn't be the case. What should happen is as women make more money, they should want men who make less money. But that's not what happens. That's not what happens at all. What happens is when you go into these places, and there's certain industries and certain metropolitan areas where women make more money than men. In fact, I'll bet Las Vegas is probably one of them. Because of the nightlife industry here, the women here make significantly more money than men. In those industries, instead of women wanting men who are poor, they want men who are even richer than them. I use the example, Rihanna was worth several hundred million and she was dating a billionaire. Like that wasn't enough for her. So in general, throughout different societies, women want men to make about 1.6 times as much as they do. And the more the more poverty in the country, the greater that disparity becomes. And so again, we wouldn't see that ubiquitously across all societies if it wasn't something based in evolution. So I think that's when you ask what do women want to find the best partner they can. And the problem that happens is we want to talk about what do women want as far as a mate, the thing is, and this is a really difficult thing for a lot of people to swallow, but women want what other women want. Women want the man that other women find attractive. And a lot of women don't like to admit this. And I've said this before a million times, and I know it's controversial, but women don't want a man who cheats, but they want a man who could. They want a man that other women would find attractive. It's the same thing. If I was trying to hire a closer for my sales team, I want a closer that other companies would want. And in fact, if you see, like, for instance, a free agent in some sporting league, whatever, and all of a sudden he becomes a free agent, there's a bidding war for his services. You want to sign the free agent that other teams want. That's basically how it works. It's a function of social proof and mate choice copying.
What about the idea of security, women wanting security?
So while it is also very important, women will still find a man attractive who does not provide security. So what I mean by that is, so here's a really important distinction, Richard. There's the part that women leave out. Okay. Generally, and by the way, this is not saying women are bad or men are bad. It's just men's, because their attraction initially is so much more shallow. I don't think it's shallow, but that's just a word you could use. Shallow and compared to women's, whereas men are mainly, concerned with youth and beauty when they initially see a woman that they're physically attracted to. Because of that, the things men think that they want in a woman and they actually want in a woman, they align pretty much. Like if a man tells you, I like skinny women with big boobs and green eyes, and you were to go through and look at his search history, that's generally what you're going to find. He's pretty much in touch with that. But often what you'll find with women is they'll say things like, I want a man who's nice and caring, who buys me flowers and is extremely sensitive and is extremely vulnerable. And the part that they're leaving out, Richard, is that they want a man they're attracted to bring them flowers and to be vulnerable, to be nice and sweet. If they're not attracted to the man, then that doesn't matter. And you know as well as I do, guys who are scoundrels, who provide no protection, who are not kind, who are not good with animals, who don't read a bunch of books, and women find them outrageously attractive. You see them all the time. So attraction is based on something that a lot of times women won't describe for you. What they're describing for you is things that make them feel comfortable, maybe a closer pair bond with the man that they're already attracted to, but they always leave the attraction part out. What is the thing that makes a man attractive? So if you were to go through a woman's past and find out that she ended up sleeping with this bartender that she thought was hot because he had tattoo sleeves and he was tall, she's always going to leave that part out. But she's going to talk about a man who's kind and intelligent. It's the part that women leave out. And again, it's not because women are bad. It's because the way their attraction works is not as in alignment with what they actually do, as opposed to with men where it's almost exactly the same.
And there are examples, right, of this?
What do you mean? Yeah, I mean, there's tons of examples of
what you just said.
There's tons of examples. Yeah, I mean, I have women frequently. One of the classic cases, I had a woman come on my podcast and explain to me that she was a sapiosexual and like men who are intelligent. And I was like, first off, you don't care about any man who's intelligent because your last two boyfriends were a male stripper and a VIP host. Like, I know both of them. They're both male models. You don't care about it. And she looks at me and goes, yeah, you're right. And then I was talking to this other girl and she's like, I want a man who's kind and nice or whatever. And it's like, well, describe your ex to me. Oh, my ex was a narcissist. And I'm like, what? Like, how does that make do you not see how that doesn't align? Like, it's one of these things where they keep telling you the things that they want in a man. And then you ask them about every single one of their previous relationships. And it's very clear the man was just like, he had a lot of other women chasing. He had boundaries. There are things that she keeps leaving out when it comes to attraction. And so if you just pay attention to what people do and not what they say, the self-reporting part of it, they call in literature unreliable narrator. If you just pay attention to what people say and not is essentially pay attention to what people do and not what they say, you're going to find an answer that's much closer to the truth. And by the way, I say the same thing for women. When a woman is seeing a man and the man's like, yeah, I just don't feel like having sex right now because I'm tired or I'm stressed at work. Maybe once a month, I could see that being the problem. Like if he's super stressed at work, right? But for the most part, if a man is just like making excuses why he's not having sex with her, it's because he's not attracted to her. Men are not that complicated. We talked about before about men's attraction triggers being very shallow, and it's true. And a lot of times, this is advice I often give to women. I'm like, take your entire interaction with a man, go back through it the last couple months, and just remove all the words. Well, he said he was going to come over and he told me he loved me and he couldn't wait. He told me he couldn't wait to introduce me to his mom. And I was like, okay, go back. What did he actually do? It's like, well, he said he was coming over and he didn't. He said he was going to fly in town, but he didn't. He's like, if you just pay attention to what he does, the girl's like, oh, I see it. It was there all the time. If you just pay attention to a man's actions, then it's much easier to read him, because I do think, especially from an emotional standpoint, I would say men are simpler. I'm not that men aren't emotional, but they're simpler than I think women are, less complex than I think women are.
Can this work on the level of business as well?
Of course. I mean, it's a little different. There's similarities and there's differences. If you're selling a product, and it actually depends. I mean, this is really inside baseball. But if you're doing B2B, like business to business or enterprise solutions, there's no emotion. They're trying to nickel and dime you. You're dealing with someone who's totally dispassionate. You have to, because you're dealing with these massive companies who are just going to grind you to the lowest possible price. So there's no like sales technique, if that makes any sense, when you're dealing with an enterprise. And for a lot of businesses, it's more of a logical, it's not completely logical. There has to be some feeling of connection. When you're doing B2C, like business to consumer, you have to invoke a feeling, which, by the way, when men are communicating with women and trying to generate attraction, what they're doing is projecting a feeling on the woman that she feels towards him. And it's generally not based in logic, reason, or accountability. It's based in attraction triggers, evolutionary attraction triggers, because attraction for women is not a choice. Attraction for men is not a choice either. Attraction is not a choice. So it's one of these things where when you're able to evoke that feeling in a woman, then she feels attraction. So in that case, it is kind of similar to business when it comes to persuasion, but it's also a little different because I also, found that with women generally trying to convince them using logic or reason or accountability or deduction or any of those things in order to get a woman to be attracted to you is kind of a fool's errand.
On your X profile, you write, the reason women tell you just be yourself is so that they can pick out who the losers are quicker.
Yeah, I absolutely stand by that. It's one of these things where I want you to consider in the dating marketplace, if young, attractive women hold the highest standing, then that means the status quo benefits them. Does that make sense? And we see this in all kinds of societies. Societies where the status quo is benefited, those people are going to defend the system the hardest, right? So really attractive young women are going to tell you, just be yourself. Why? Because if everyone is honest, then it's easier for them to see who the winners and who the losers are. But for instance, Richard, if you were to take a class with me and I would make you incredibly, not to say you're not, but to make you incredibly humorous and charismatic. If I were to teach you how to network with a bunch of very high status people in your community, and when you went on a date with a girl, the whole thing was set up in a way to where everyone was like, hey, Richard, what's going on? You had a ton of social proof. If I were to do that, are you being yourself? Well, technically you're not, but you are more attractive to her. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Men using certain techniques in order to generate attraction with women doesn't benefit attractive women. So of course, women's response to that is just be yourself. It also doesn't benefit really good looking men. And you'll notice that the dating coaches who tell you just be yourself that are men are always really good looking male model type of guys.
Why is that?
Because again, goes back to the status quo. In the status quo, if a guy who looks like a male model goes up to a girl and he bees himself, he's going to get the girl because he's really attractive. If the really attractive girl talks to several men and then one of these guys, he just knows how to make her laugh, but he learned it in a way that doesn't benefit her. In her mind, she's like, my ex-girlfriend was very similar. She's like, only really good looking people only date each other. These unattractive guys could never get a girl like me. That's what she felt like, and not recognizing that, like, she was way more attractive than I was, but she didn't recognize that there were attraction triggers that I was able to invoke. And because she didn't recognize that, she was kind of blind to what was going on. There's a saying, a privilege is invisible to those who have it. It's one of these things where like really attractive women don't have to work in order to get men to come after them and chase them. That's a really good societal structure. Imagine if this is one of the things why women, when they're middle-aged, really don't like the idea of a sexual marketplace, because they're losing power in the sexual marketplace once they turn 40, 45, 50. When they do that, and so what they want to do is deny that there even is a sexual marketplace. But when they were 23, they didn't have an idea. They didn't have a problem with this idea. Instead, because in the status quo of a really young, attractive woman, she's going to get the most attention from men. So if you want the status quo to stay the same, the best way for you to do that is for everyone to be honest and for you to just be yourself. Because if you aren't yourself, then a hot woman might accidentally get with a guy who's not super attractive. That's the reason why.
What's your take on dating older women? Is it the same?
I mean, definitely. I would say in my 20s, that was something that I actually enjoyed. It wasn't, but I mean, I was really young, and I remember dating women who were older, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I haven't dated someone older than me though in probably 25 years. In general, it's not something I have a ton of expertise in, dating older women. But I will say in general, Most men, especially if they climb the socioeconomic ladder, want to be with someone who's younger than them. Most women report wanting to be with a man who's older than them. So, and the funny thing is, when they do those studies in societies where there's a greater disparity, like a socioeconomic disparity, the age difference between men and their wives increases. Also, in different societies, as men climb the socioeconomic ladder,
Hmm.
like meaning become wealthier, the age disparity between them and their wives also increases.
And these studies, where can one find them?
Just look up. I would use Perplexity, ChatGPT, or Grok, and just say, "Hey, can you find an evolutionary psychology study that goes over the age differences between men and their wives, the preferences, and the actual marriage statistics on that?" And you'll find a lot of the data there.
How would how would you define sort of exploitation versus flirtation? Do you think there's a fine line between both?
Oh, no. And I'll tell you why. And I know the pickup community is like really, really has a deep history in London. The idea that you're talking about when it comes to exploitation, I assume you're meaning like men saying exploitative things to women to
Yeah,
like
like
try to manipulate them. Okay.
PUA
So the thing is,
training was one of
yeah,
them. Richard,
correct.
whom I met, we were going to do there was a series with an Australian broadcaster
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I was going to be
Uh,
involved in, but it didn't happen. It would have been fun though. But
UMP,
yeah,
you talking about Ultimate Man
PUA.
Project?
I think this is PUA training. Richard, he
Richard
wrote.
Rambler.
I think so. He wrote a book.
Okay. Okay. So I don't think any of that stuff works.
Oh,
I'll just be honest with you. Yeah,
okay.
I don't. So I'm a social circle coach. I'm not a pickup artist. Is another thing. I believe in that article they kind of connected me to the pickup artist community.
That's
I'm
right.
not a pickup artist, never been a pickup artist. In fact, I'm not even red pill. I'm red pill adjacent. He conveniently left out the part that most of my friends are female and that I work with a domestic abuse charity and try to pin me, to pin me up to like some mass murderer. Like that's how from a literary standpoint, how incredibly lazy that article was.
Uh-huh.
To be fair, you want to know something else, Richard? I'm disappointed because I wish it had done better. Because again, when I saw all the publicity that Owen Cook got from that book, The Game, I had kind of hoped that this article would do better, but it doesn't seem to like be doing well at all. So, the thing I'll say is, going back to this, I don't think that I think women, especially with the internet, the way it is now and how people can share techniques and experiences, I think the idea of using some of the stuff from the pickup community, I don't think works very well. The other thing is, Richard, I'm going to say this. There's an article, you should look this one up. 5 nightclubs every week are shutting down in London.
Mm.
And
Mm.
the reason why is because women in general are just not going out as much. People in general, younger generation is not going out as much. They're not drinking as much. But women in general, and more specifically, really attractive women, are not going out to nightclubs anymore. They're just not doing it. And I have one of my friends who's like one of the most former pickup artists in the world, and he even telling me the same thing. He's like, these beautiful women are just not out here anymore. It's just not very common to see them. I think what you're referring to, as far as the exploitative stuff, is some of the direct game stuff that some guys
Right.
do
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
pickup
yeah.
community.
Touching and
And
stuff like that.
by the way, let me say this: I'm not saying it. I said before it doesn't work. Let me reiterate that. I think it's inefficient. I think it's very inefficient. Is it morally questionable? I don't think it's as morally questionable as people make it out to be. I really don't think most of the guys that I've seen in the pickup community are just good dudes. They're just like, trying to figure out women. But I do think that it's incredibly ineffective in comparison to doing something like creating a social circle of cool people, men and women, where you guys go out and do things on a regular basis. So the weekends, you might go wakeboarding. You might have everybody come over for a card night. You might have a Taco Tuesday. You guys might all go to a concert together and have a large group of men and women that way. I think that's a far superior way to end up dating a beautiful woman than going and doing, tactics as far as pickup is concerned. Study by Lucy Hill in 2015, where she looks at the correlation between attractiveness in a couple and how long they've known each other before they started dating. So they would ask, when did you meet? When did you start dating? And then they had the people in the course, or the other people in the researchers, rate the attractiveness of all the people in the group, and it was from like +3 to -3. I believe at the 1 month mark, the people, when they got together, if they got together after 1 month, the correlation of attractiveness was like 0.72. But when they got to the 9 month mark, Richard, the correlation was zero. Meaning the guy who was the 5 could date the girl who was a 10 if they had been friends with each other for 9 months, i.e., social circle. So that's why I say I think the social circle thing is far more prevalent. I also I host Swimsuit USA's World Championship in Mexico every year, and it's girls from all over the world that come and compete. It's a swimsuit competition. It's a pageant, and a lot of these girls tattoos, no OnlyFans, don't have a huge social media following. And when you ask every single one of them, they don't meet people through dating apps. And they've never dated a guy through cold approach. Every single one of them told me that they met a guy either because they saw his Instagram or because a friend of a friend introduced them. You guys can check that video out on my YouTube channel. That video pissed a lot of people off when it came out because it kind of debunks a lot of the pickup stuff that a lot of people were doing. And I'm not saying the pickup stuff never worked. It definitely worked 20 years ago because people were going out more and social media was less prevalent. I'm saying now because of social media, the pickup ideology of like your main source of meeting women is cold approach. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I am saying it's less efficient. And if you don't believe me, just go look at the 200 testimonials on my website, moamentoring.com/testimonials, or you can just look at my IG. Like it's obvious. Like there's no way to compare the difference between the two. One is arithmetic and the other is geometric.
Does one create a social circle, or does one go into a social circle? I mean, how's this? How
you can do both. You can adopt. You can have social circles they can be concentric circles where parts of them overlap. That definitely can happen. So I have social circle. There's a bunch of podcasters that I go visit in Miami once a year. They have a social circle. And then I have a social circle that's kind of based around, I have a buddy named Dan Fleischman who lives out here. And this guy knows every influencer out on the West Coast. And there's 2 different social circles. And I've introduced several of them to one another at one point or another. And they've become, I've introduced the people from different social circles. I have a social circle in Los Angeles and a different one in Las Vegas. And often my friends, when they come with me, some of the girls who come from Vegas to LA, I'll introduce them to my social circle in LA and vice versa. I also have a social circle here on YouTube of streamers that I do shows with. And then I have a social circle of girls that do the bikini competitions with me. And I have a social circle of people who come to charity events with me. They're all different social circles. Partially, did I create them? I think my specific section of that social circle I did create, but overall, no. Like generally, I'm going into someone else's social circle, or I may be creating one out of multiple pieces because we're all social creatures. That's the reason why Homo sapiens, the apex predator on the planet, is because we work together. It's not one. The reason why Homo sapiens are the apex predator is not because one man can kill a tiger, a lion, or bear. It's because a group of men got together, communicated, and was able to kill a lion, a tiger, a bear. It's because a group of men and women got together and were able to build fortification and a city, a village to be able to protect themselves. And so humans are social animals, probably the most social of all the animals. And because of that, our ability to socialize with one another garners us greater resources and sexual selection.
And so this is the technique you would advocate more so than others, right?
I would advocate being the center of your social circle. Yes. And working exclusively on that. Leadership is a very underrated attribute when it comes to that. Again, I'm not saying like cold approach pickup is wrong, but I do think it's less efficient than doing social circle.
What's your take on men who hate women and women who hate men?
The men who hate women, I do think is more of a defense mechanism. I think it's one of these things where it's a way to protect themselves from a certain level of rejection. Like I've said this before, if you see a girl on my show and you call her a slut, but she wouldn't sleep with you, what does that say about you? And I think a lot of guys just spew out the pejoratives because they want to protect themselves. I also think the idea that men hating women is a little bit exaggerated, meaning like there's some guys who have a criticism like, hey, I don't want my girlfriend to go on to have sex with random dudes on OnlyFans. That doesn't mean you hate women just because you criticize that. I do think it says a lot about our society. One of your country women, Bonnie Blue, had sex with 1,000 men in 24 hours. And for me to say, hey, I think it's really fucking weird that 1,000 guys lined up to have sex with her. I think that says a lot about men. And I think it's kind of gross that they did that. Someone might interpret that as me saying, I hate women. I don't hate women. You can be critical of people and not hate them. So I do think, like, for instance, Mia Khalifa saying something like, it's actually worse to join the military than it is to do pornography. Her saying that, I think, is absurd. That doesn't mean I hate her or I hate women. You can be critical of your gender or the opposite gender, and it doesn't make you hate them. Now, going back to women who hate men, I think it's also a protective mechanism. I definitely found there is a study. It's at the end of Dr. David Buss's book, his evolutionary psychology textbook, where he goes over the fact that the more unattractive a woman is, the more likely she is to be a feminist. Or rather, feminists tend to be more unattractive women. Yes.
Do you think the election of Trump has changed the landscape in terms of male, female, and trans relationships in America?
No, I don't think it's changed the dynamic between male and female engagement, because that is a function of That's Charles Darwin. That's not Donald Trump. But do I think it's changed the way people are going to be viewed on social media? It definitely is, because the more you allow, so you can't really have it both ways, right? You can't tell women they can't get naked on the internet and then at the same time advocate for freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So I think what you're going to see is it's a double-edged sword. For a content creator like me, it's going to be harder because of some of the legislation the Trump administration has proposed, which is the complete polar opposite of the way it works in your country. In your country, you guys have censorship laws when actually people misgender them or use homophobic slurs, they can be arrested for hate speech. There's been, since 2003, I believe, over 5,000 people have been arrested due to the censorship laws in the United Kingdom. In fact, Richard, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody comes after you for me saying that in this video. There's also, in the United States, we don't have the same issue. In the United States, generally the progressives want to censor people, what they say online, and the conservatives want like ultimate freedom of speech, even when it's stupid speech. Like I don't agree with flat earthers, but I don't think they should be deplatformed. And so I think it's a situation like that. So if you agree with complete and total freedom of speech, then that means when Sophie Rain makes $59 million on OnlyFans, you can't do anything to stop it, and you shouldn't even try. And you may say, well, that's a horrible commentary on humanity, and you might be right. I do think that $59 million could be used to feed a lot of starving people rather than an 18-year-old girl living in a bop house in Miami. Nicole Bergoli, who's being abused by her boyfriend, he hits her and he cheats on her, and this woman's made like $42 million in a year, $39 million in a year on OnlyFans. I do think there was probably better uses of that money, but I also don't begrudge women for wanting to make money on OnlyFans because it's a free market economy. I totally understand this is the arena we're going to. And at the same time, while I can completely and totally, without any judgment, appreciate the fact that a woman wants to make money doing that, if a woman wants to have sex with multiple men on her OnlyFans, I have the right to not date her.
Did you vote?
And by the way, that doesn't mean I hate women.
Sure.
That doesn't mean I hate women.
Did you vote? Did you vote for Trump or did you vote for?
So I'll tell you, I wasn't going to vote.
Democrats.
And what happened was Donald Trump gave a speech where he talked about making certain that that social media companies were going to have to give you the right to a speedy appeal process, and that your appeals were going to have to be reviewed by a human being, and that the companies had to tell you exactly why your accounts were being suspended, and that government agencies, I don't know if you've seen, but like government agencies in the United States have actually asked social media agencies to suspend certain accounts on different platforms. Because Donald Trump made that a priority during his campaign, that's why I voted for him. Because me as a content creator, I often state uncomfortable truths, and I'm sick and tired of being ratioed for saying stuff that is factually based. And so that's the reason why I voted for him, my own personal interest. There's other things. I do believe in free market economy. I do believe in the Second Amendment. I am a little bit more, and I also am very much pro free speech. I'm a little bit right of center, but I'm not I wouldn't call myself a Trump supporter, but I did vote for him.
What's your take on Elon Musk and the Trump feud? Do you think that's engendered a lot of toxicity in the States, or is it just being made a big deal of just to avoid certain agendas and issues being sort of funneled down the chain a bit?
I think it's more of a function of their cartoon. They become cartoon characters. They become caricatures of themselves. I don't. When I listen to Kanye West, it's not, agree or disagree. I just see a person who suffers from mental illness. I've seen the videos, I don't know if you've seen him, of him just talking to himself, walking up and down the street. He says things like slavery was a choice. Like he just says things that are, the Austrian painter invented the microphone, whatever. I don't, he says things, and it's one of these things where I just kind of smile and recognize that I'm looking at mental illness. I don't hate Kanye West, but I just recognize that. When I look at Elon, while I do think he's one of the smartest men in the entire world, I also know that he uses a lot of ketamine and Adderall. And I think this is a situation where that's gotten the best of him and caused him to make some decisions that were a bit rash. For him to, like, for instance, the tax credit for, I would like to buy a Tesla at some point. The tax credit for electric cars that the Trump administration is repealing. Well, the reason why you had that tax credit in the first place is because those cars were outrageously expensive. It's because they were in development. And now over time, once you have economies of scale, the prices of the electric drivetrains should come down over time. And then you shouldn't have the US government subsidizing it. That's a conservative belief. And so for Elon Musk to be that offended because of that, I thought was a little bit surprising. It was a little surprising. It makes me sad because I am a fan of Elon Musk, very much so, but just his ingenuity. I think he is the things that he has built in this world are very important. The supply chains and SpaceX and Tesla are incredible. The fact that he's able to manufacture so many of those parts in the United States is an incredible testament. The fact that he's able to cheaply or much less expensively put cargo into space is incredible. Put cargo into orbit and take it to the space station is absolutely incredible. When it comes to things like Starlink, and when it comes to, the thing about Twitter is, even if you don't like Twitter, it's sort of a backstop for freedom of expression, if that makes any sense. Meaning, like, if other platforms start censoring people, those people now can go to Twitter, which then makes Twitter more of a viable place than those other platforms, which is why you've seen places like YouTube and places like places like Facebook really loosen the reins when it comes to censorship.
And what about the Trump social media platform? That's a bit more regulated.
So I don't really have any experience with True Social. It's interesting to me. I think Trump is a politician. He says things that are, that he's a salesman, and he says things that are salesy sometimes. I don't know. There's a lot of different places I can go with this. But Gavin Newsom today came out and said that he was going to sue the Trump administration for calling in the National Guard, because the crisis in Southern California was manufactured and the riots are under control. And then you'll see these videos of like numerous people throwing rocks and bricks at police officers, and it clearly isn't under control. I've talked to several people in Los Angeles. They say parts of the city are continuing to burn. The fact that Gavin Newsom can say something like that with a straight face shows me that he has no regard for his constituents. And I have no idea how the people of California have not gotten rid of that man. It's unbelievable to me. And so, do politicians exaggerate for their own benefit? I would say on both sides of the aisle, they do that. And is Donald Trump, does he sometimes exaggerate when it comes to some of his expressions? I would say I agree that he probably does. But I think if you want to say and I know your question was about True Social, and this is about True Social, this is about Twitter, all of it. I would say if you want to know what is Donald Trump really, Donald Trump is the response to unbridled wokeness in the United States. It got too rampant, it got too out of control. And the response, because it was so extreme, was to elect an opponent to that wokeness who was equally as extreme. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So very quickly, do you believe in the 80-20 rule?
I don't. So the 80-20 rule is, so first off, if we were talking about the Pareto principle in general, the function of fractals, that is a truth in mathematics, but is it a truth when it comes to women and men? So the idea of 80-20 rule, it's kind of a misnomer, meaning the people who don't like manosphere content, they bastardize the way that rule is used to try to make it seem like red pill content creators are saying that 20% of men are sleeping with 80% of women. No one in the red pill is saying that. At least no one that I associate with is saying that. No one is saying that. This is a misnomer, again, perpetuated in that show Adolescence that was on Netflix. No, I have never said that. What it comes from is there was a OK Cupid article, and there's several other studies that show this, that about 80% of women, I'm sorry, 80% of men on social media apps. Okay, let me start over. 80% of men on these dating apps were perceived to be below average attractiveness. 80%. Now, let's just say that number's not 80%. Let's say it's 70%. Or below average, meaning women found 30% of men to be attractive. Let's be more conservative. Let's say 30% of men to be unattractive. By the way, men are the same thing. If you were to say, hey, which girls are like extremely attractive, they would only pick like 10 or 20% of women to say they're extremely attractive. It's the same thing. Like, which cars are the most beautiful? Generally, people would say, the Bugatti, the Lamborghini, the Ferrari. It's okay to have favorites. It's okay to say, I would prefer to have this as opposed to this. It's okay to, you know what I'm saying? It's okay to want to sit in first class versus coach. It's fine to do that. So what women's preferences are, their preference tends to be for a higher status man, okay, in general. Does that preference always manifest? No. There's a term called assortative mating, where generally what happens is the barista doesn't marry the billionaire. And in that case, what people like to say is this 80-20 rule is just a way to promote hypergamy, which is hatred towards women, which of course it isn't. A simple debate. Anyone wants to debate me on this, it's very easy to debunk.
And
yeah.
What's your, in your courses, what's success? Have you had stories where people have been totally lost and then they've come out successful? What's success? What's failure? Can you define those in your course?
Yeah. Success for me is gratitude. It's like actually having gratitude for recognizing how amazing your life is. And success for me is also building a social circle full of people that I can accomplish goals with. I think the apex of the human existence is accomplishing goals with other people and having a family. So I would say that's success, along with having present moment awareness, with having gratitude, and with also having the realization of your own mortality, that you're going to die. And so because you're going to die, taking this opportunity to make the most of it. I think that's what I would categorize success as.
Well, what are the major challenges of the course that you've experienced with participants?
It works so incredibly well that sometimes my copywriters have a hard time writing the copy because they think it sounds fake. I have a guy who's 4'11" in the course who's dating beautiful women, and I show pictures of it and people cannot believe it. I have clients that are overweight, clients that are in their 60s and 70s who are able to attract beautiful women, and it's undeniable. There's no way to deny that it's true. I have grandfathers in the program who are like dating beautiful women. And because you see the irrefutable visual evidence of it, it makes it difficult sometimes for us in the sales process because it seems too good to be true. But the thing that it's not too good to be true, it's just a lost art. The understanding of attraction triggers is something that was lost in part because of social scientists and behaviorism, basically superseding evolutionary psychology. And when you understand concepts and evolution, then it makes a lot more sense.
And that's taught in your course. Does this work in Japan as well? Have you been to Japan?
I absolutely believe it would work in Japan. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see any reason why. But I have several friends of mine that have gone to Japan and said that it's not, they actually prefer women in Japan. I don't see why it would work any different there.
Oh, any final comments? Future plans?
Yeah, I will say this. There's the term red pill, or there's that term 80-20 rule, or things like that. What I'm starting to find is these terms that are used in like the male self-improvement space, they're only used by people who don't like that space used against them. So just consider in your country, you guys have a Labor Party, you have a Green Party. In our country, we have the Republicans and the Democrats. Republicans consistently use the dumbest things that Democrats say against them in a political election, and Democrats use the dumbest things that Republicans say in a political election. Basically, red pill has become whatever you need it to be in order to bash your opponents. Okay. And the 80-20 rule is whatever people need to use in order to make it seem like people in male self-improvement hate women when they don't. So I don't mind that you're being sold to, just know that you're being sold.
And very quickly, we've got about 30 seconds left. Social media, is that a good thing? Is that going to help people make social connections, do you think? Or do we have to meet each other now in person?
Yeah. So here's the thing. The answer is it doesn't matter because it's not going away. It doesn't. It's just like the questions about OnlyFans or pornography or sex robots or whatever, we're only going in one direction. So I think it's time for you to get used to it. It's time for people, regardless of whether or not you think social media is good or bad, you better get used to it.
What about AI?
AI is it's same kind of situation. AI is going to implement itself even faster than social media did. Social media had about a 15-year run. AI in about 2 or 3 years is going to be the norm in almost everything,
including dating, right?
It's going to help with dating. But I also could see, people having synthetic dates.
All right.
With androids.
Thank you very much.
All right, man.
Cheers.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
This podcast is sponsored by Camera Museum of London and Tang Cigars at 44 Museum Street, London. Thank you for listening to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Should you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please get in touch.